Pittsburgh Steelers fans, what's going on? This is Jeff Hartman, editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, with another episode of the BTSC flagship podcast. The Standard is the Standard. It's an early edition. We were trying to do this during halftime of the U.S. Women's National Team World Cup game. I feel like we spilled over into the second half. I really don't care, but my co-host does. Lance Williams out in California. He's got a daughter that plays soccer. What's up, Lance?
What's happening, Jeff? What's that design on your shirt? Is that a peace sign?
This was a pirate stand, Pittsburgh Pirate stand for cancer. It's a ribbon with a baseball bat. That's like
Oh, okay.
a pirate's
Okay.
initiative.
I know I don't have an interesting lid today, but I don't know if you guys could see it. It's a Steagles. I have a Steagles shirt on, which is during World War II, I believe, when the Philadelphia Eagles and the Steelers combined to become the Steagles.
There you go. Yeah, that's exactly it. And then when the war ended, teams went back to their normal ways. So I highlighted this show, or I guess I should say I used the title of the show, and we're going to talk about that if you caught it in YouTube, whatever. But before we get into the meat of this episode, I want to get our opinions, because if you didn't know, the last two episodes we went back and we predicted the offensive depth chart, the defensive depth chart, and I wasn't about to do an entire episode on the specialists, but for the first time in a long time, I feel that it's actually worth discussing. So we had 3 spots left on our 53-man roster. Do you think that will be Cameron Canaday at long snapper, Jordan Berry at punter, and Chris Boswell as place kicker when the dust settles in 2019?
I think of those positions, of course, given the way the Steelers handled Boswell's contract situation, I think the competition clearly is at the place kicking position. It's hard to say what it'll be, if it'll be, whoever's in the competition, but I think the question is, and riddle me this, Jeff, will it be either of those guys?
What do you mean?
Will it be a guy at the end of training camp that they pick up off the street, where neither one of those guys will perform good enough to actually have the position, and they have to go get somebody?
That's another good point, and because Matthew Wright is the kicker that's going to be challenging Boswell. I want to say it's Ian Berryman, maybe, is the punter they brought in to challenge Jordan Berry. So it happens every year where you have these competitions and a veteran gets released. But so let me add, I think that the Steelers are going to go into 2019, although I hate to say it, with the status quo. I think it's going to be Berry, Boswell, and Canaday as your 3 specialists. Do you see them going out and getting someone else, or do you see it being the same as it ever was?
I tend to agree with you. I think it'll be the same that it ever was, but I think if there is a change that's going to be made, they'll go to the waiver wire. They won't go to a rookie kicker. They won't go that route. I think they'll go with an established veteran who's made some clutch kicks at some point in their career and bring that individual in. I think going with an inexperienced place kicker, after the woes that they had last year, I don't think they're in the mood for that. I think that's queasy on the stomach. So I think they'll go and get a vet.
Yeah, someone like I'm trying to think if there's a player I can think of, a kicker that I can think of that would possibly fit that criteria. But the Steelers have had some disasters picking up kickers, though.
I mean, you might as well get my daughter if they're going to get a rookie. I mean, she's a soccer style kicker. She doesn't really care about pressure that much. She doesn't like football. So going out and just kicking field goals, she'd be like, hey, let's just do it. Let's try it.
Well, Boswell was a rookie kicker when they picked him up.
Yes, he was. I mean, you see where they're at now, though.
Well, yeah. I guess it depends on if you're just looking for a stopgap. Like, you're like, hey, we're looking for a guy that's going to be reliable this year, 1-year deal. That's it. It'll be interesting. But I just have a feeling, I've said this on other shows, I've said it on this show too, the Steelers don't like to admit fault. They don't like to admit they were wrong, and they would have to do that and bite that bullet with especially Boswell's contract. Jordan Berry, in my opinion, is expendable. I've said that on multiple shows. and
he's
multiple
your
times.
he's your guy. He's your guy. Don't be hard on him. He's your guy.
He's something, that's for sure. So, okay, enough specialist talk. We'll see how that goes. What I wanted to talk about today, and I'll tell you where this started and where this stemmed from for those listening or watching on YouTube. I was reading a Steelers.com piece on Steven Nelson, and one of the reasons why he chose the Pittsburgh Steelers to go and be a part of was he said the physicality of the defense. And I thought to myself for a second, everyone thinks when they think of Steelers, they think of steel curtain, they think of defense, they think of hard hitting, they think of a raucous environment, a team that had their fans travel well, all of that stuff. But I kept on asking myself as I'm reading this, is it really like that anymore? Are the Steelers still a team that when an opposition looks at their schedule and sees that, oh my gosh, we've got the Steelers in week 4, that's going to be a tough one? Or is it going to be man, the Steelers aren't what they used to be? Lance, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, how are other teams, in your opinion, viewing the Steelers?
Well, when you give up 22 and a half points a game, I think they're viewing the Steelers as mm, a tasty dish, a tasty morsel, food that they can get after. I mean, I just don't think the NFL in and of itself is a very physical league. Or I'll take that back. It's a very physical league, but it's not like it was. The NFL I think has done um, I don't know, a great job. I don't know if great is the adjective, but I know they have had a concerted effort in trying to remove some of the physicality out of the game. You see the moves on special teams, the targeting of a receiver, hitting quarterbacks. I mean, they really go out of their way to defend offensive players. So maybe given that he's a defensive player, maybe he has that perspective because defensive players typically aren't protected. You can kill guys' knees even when you're engaged in a block as a defensive lineman, so on and so forth. There's a lot of examples of that. So I just don't think the league in and of itself is physical. And I don't think this defense is really physical. It gets sacks, but when you give up almost 23 points a game, I don't know if that's physical. I think the Chicago Bears were physical, but I don't know if the calling card of the Steelers is physicality. I mean, 22 and a half points a game in 2018, 19.3, decent year in 2017, 20.4, 19.9, and another 23 points per game. So I don't know if that's physicality. I mean, ripping your head off. I mean, we watch this team. I don't think we come away with thinking like this is a super hard hitting group that teams fear. I think we think like this is a group that teams try to really attack because there's some holes. Specifically, there's been some holes in the secondary, and teams really try to get after the Steelers.
Okay, well, let's backtrack a little bit before we talk about the Steelers defense specifically. And I want to ask you a simple question. Can you tell me a defense last season, and you mentioned one, I'm not sure I agree with you though, that you would say struck fear in opponent's period? So they did. I agree 100%. The NFL has taken those Ryan Clark on Willis McGahee hits out of the game. Players aren't really scared to go over the middle anymore. That Ryan Clark on Wes Welker hit up in New England. Um, is there a team in the NFL right now, a defense that you would say this defense does it still?
No, I really don't think so. I don't think so. I don't go out and think like this defense is. No, I really don't think so. I mean, we saw scoring. I mean, we saw epic scoring last year in the NFL. I think defenses are still trying to catch up with having to literally, as Mike Tomlin says, defend every blade of grass. And I think we've seen defenses struggle to a certain standpoint. I mean, look at Kansas City's offense. I mean, just look at that. I mean, we've seen some ridiculous things in the NFL. I mean, would you ever think that a first year starter would throw for 50 touchdowns in the National Football League
Nope.
and win MVP?
Nope.
And first year starter. I mean, so no, I don't think there's a defense that strikes absolute fear in any offense. I think offenses feel if they can pass protect consistently, they can get after anybody.
Okay, so let's also go. What was the last defense you think that did strike fear? I'm thinking the Legion of Boom in Seattle. Agree or disagree, or can you think of one more recent than that?
And I would think the Legion of Boom and
Okay.
maybe some of those, Ray Lewis led Raven defenses that were still pretty good. Some of those
If you're
guys.
going back there, you're going back to when the Steelers defense was still feared.
No, so I think you're right. I think in this, I hate to say quote unquote modern era, I think Legion of Boom is a solid answer.
Someone in the live chat brought up going, they sort of had the Jaguars defense, not this past year, but the year before that.
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay.
That Jags defense was really good. Calais Campbell was really good up front. They're really good on the edges in terms of their corners with Ramsey and Bouye. And they had the outstanding Miles Jack, and they had those great linebackers. So yes, that was a physical defense. I think that did strike some fear as much as you can in this current NFL.
So you talk about the current NFL. My follow-up question is, if defenses aren't allowed to scare people anymore because of the rule changes that have taken place, do you think that offenses are now what are feared in the National Football League? You brought up the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. You look at the Rams and the offense, what they did out in LA last year. There's a long list of offenses that can really do some damage. Do you think that's the way that if we're talking fear and you look at a schedule and you're looking at, oh boy, we got to deal with this, is that, quote unquote, using air quotes for those listening, is that now offensive prowess and firepower where it used to be defense?
I think you're right. I think it's definitely offense. I mean, that Monday night game, or I think it was Monday night. I don't know if it was
Yep.
Sunday night, but that game, that KC St. Louis game, I mean, that was just, I mean, I've never seen any,
It was ridiculous. It was
I mean,
absolutely ridiculous.
I've never seen anything like that. I think you're right. I mean, teams fear offense. Let me just give you, this is the top 15 scoring offenses. You got KC 35.3, Rams 32.9, New Orleans 31.5, New England, I'm going to round up 28. You got the Steelers 27, Indy 27. You got the Chargers 27, Seattle 27, Chicago 27, Atlanta 26, Houston 25, Tampa Bay 25. You even had Baltimore at 24.3, and you got Green Bay and Carolina at 24 points a game. I mean, that is a lot of teams scoring a lot of points. So I think you hit the nail on the head. I think offenses are what are feared. I mean, a team scoring 35.3 points per game, that's just insane. I mean, that's even insane if you play Madden.
So okay, let's finish this up with this question. The 2019 Pittsburgh Steelers offense, is that striking fear in anybody?
Yes,
You think so?
I think it,
Even without Bell and Brown and all the other pieces?
I think when you have a very good offensive line and you have a very good quarterback, that strikes fear in teams because it's still a passing offense that had over 5,000 yards. You still got two Pro Bowl skill players, and if you can't get pressure in the National Football League, there aren't a ton of good corners in football. You're going to get got. I don't care who it is because I mean, when the New York Giants can score 24 points a game, you're going to get got. So, yes, it is a scary offense still. Having no AB makes it less scary, but it's a scary offense when you got a guy that can sling that thing back there and you got guys that can protect them.
I still think, James Conner, I mean, I think he strikes as much fear as maybe Le'Veon Bell did when he was. I mean, James Conner was tearing it up last year before he got hurt.
Well, Jeff, I don't know, man. Maybe it's your disdain for Mr. Get My Robbery Took, or excuse me, my jewelry took. See, that's so funny. My robbery took. Mr. Butt Naked Thieves. Um, I love Connor. I think he's a solid guy, the Terminator, but he's not Lev Bell yet.
No, I'm
he's
not
let
comparing him to Lev Bell. I'm just saying that in terms of, like you said, striking fear. I mean, man, he ran the ball hard, and he was a different type of back than what we saw with Le'Veon Bell.
I don't know if fear would be the adjective, but he does. You have to pay attention to him for sure. I
Connor
don't
in that
think.
line, in that offensive line that
Yes,
you brought up. Yeah,
I don't think people. I don't think teams thought he was a game changer to the extent of Lev Bell. Uh, but I think they definitely was a guy like, look, if we don't pay attention to this guy, he can wreck our game.
okay. I agree with that. I agree with that 100%. All right, that was a good discussion. Let's go to something now. I wrote this in my an article today. And a lot of people were talking about Hall of Fame. Tony Dungy just went out publicly, and he wants Donnie Shell in the Hall of Fame. He had Donnie Shell introduce him into the Hall of Fame when he was inducted last season. He feels that he's deserving, and a lot of Steeler fans agree with that. I never saw Donnie Shell play. I've looked at his statistics. I've seen highlights, especially the hit where he knocked Earl Campbell out of the game down in Houston. Um, the guy has a lot of people say he has the credentials. Well, here's the question, Lance. What
Yes,
are the credentials? And I know it depends varying on position, but what are the credentials to get into the Hall of Fame? And, I gave a couple examples in my article. I read Terry Bradshaw's statistics, and I said, let's do a hypothetical. Let's say Terry Bradshaw never won a Super Bowl. Would he be in the Hall of Fame?
no,
I agree. Let's fast forward now to 2005. Let's say Jerome Bettis fumbles the ball in the AFC divisional game against in Indy. Nick Harper runs it all the way back. Ben doesn't make the tackle. The Steelers don't win Super Bowl 40. Bettis doesn't have a ring. Does he get in the Super Bowl?
yes.
I disagree. I don't think he does. Um, if you look at the games played and all that stuff. So here's my question. What exactly, in your opinion, are Hall of Fame credentials? What do they need? Because Dan Marino and Barry Sanders, who never won any Super Bowl, no one knew. There was no doubt they were getting in because they were that special. But my question for you is, what are credentials to get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame?
I think it's tough. I think for one, if your team isn't successful when you're playing, you have to be dominant at the position to where, let's say, if they give an all decade team, you're a person that's on that all decade team, or if you aren't on that all decade team, there's an argument, let's say, back and forth whether you should be on that team or not. So let's say, um, say the debate between, and I'm forgetting the safety's name, not Troy Polamalu's name, but
Ed Reed?
Ed Reed. So let's just say Ed Reed and Troy Polamalu, right? One of those guys would probably be on the all decade, probably the 2000s all decade from 2000 2010 safety. It'd be one of those guys, right? And it would be an argument as to whether it should be Troy or Ed or blah blah blah. So you have to be a dominant player at the position, right? If your team doesn't win. If your team wins and you're an integral part of that success, like the Steelers Steel Curtain team, and you're a dominant player on that team, and just looking at Donnie Shell's career highlights, five Pro Bowls, three AP first team All Pros, AP second team All Pro, four-time Super Bowl champion. I mean, so if you have those type of credentials, you probably should get in. But I think first and foremost, you have to be a dominant player at the position. Then
Agreed.
you get all those other things, the icing on the cake, the sprinkles, all that stuff is if you're well liked by the media,
That's what sucks.
if you have the right people pushing for your induction, if you're good in front of the media. Um, and unfortunately, I think for Donnie Shell, I think what he suffers from is a black and gold backlash in terms of putting players in the Hall of Fame. I think the Hall of Fame, I don't know, for some reason, it feels like the Hall is reticent to put in guys for the Steelers unless you were absolutely dominant at the position. I think Bus was a really good big back in his era. I think he was probably the best big back in his era. But like a Troy or Woodson, like those guys are going to get in because they're just absolute freaks of nature, no brainer type guys. But I think it's tough. I mean, because it's all these other things that aren't stuff that you can measure, and I think it's also tough because it's the safety position. I'm going to guess that there's probably fewer than 10 safeties in the hall. I know Dave Schofield probably knows that number off the top of his head, but I'm going to guess it's less than 10 guys at the safety position in the hall. So it's hard to pinpoint what it is, but I know first and foremost for me, you need to be a dominant player.
Okay, let's talk about some players then. So Alan Faneca has been a finalist now for I think the last 3 years. Hall of Famer, yes or no?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. I think we all agree LC Greenwood should be in.
Yes. Yes.
That's some of that Steeler backlash. I think that they don't want to put in the entire 70s roster.
Let me give you an example when I talked about the all decade stuff. Okay, so Alan Faneca was 2000's all decade team, right?
Yep.
He made 9 Pro Bowls from 2001 to 2009. That is Hall of Fame.
Okay.
I mean that's Hall of Fame, and he's a Super Bowl champion. That's Hall of Fame. Like you have to get in with those credentials. And he was a 6-time All Pro from 2001 to 2007. He won 2001, 2002, 04 to 07, and was second team 03 all 8 in 08. So he was first or second team 8 times from 2000 to 2010. I mean, you have to get in with those credentials, because if you don't get in with those credentials, who can get in?
Okay. I agree with you 100%.
So that's the type of credentials you look for players to get in. Like Mike Munchak. Mike Munchak has similar credentials to Alan Faneca, but does not have a Super Bowl championship, was an all-decade guy. If you were to take Alan Faneca's accolades from that era and put them up on a wall, you could put Mike Munchak's face right next to them. And that's why Mike Munchak is in the Hall of Fame. So,
yep. Here's a tough one for me. If I take my black and gold glasses off, this is a tough one for me. Hines Ward.
That is a tough one, but I got black and gold glasses on, baby. So
I'm trying to think of yourself as just a voter. You're a writer. You're looking at stats. You're looking at total body of work. And, is he a Hall of Fame? Pitt Steeler fans are going to say yes right off the bat, no matter what, because that's their guy. He was their guy. He played the game the right way, or as we dub the right way. Yes or no, is Hines Ward deserving of a Hall of Fame bid? He was a Super Bowl MVP, 1-2.
Absolutely, he's a Hall of Famer. He won 2 Super Bowls, Super Bowl MVP, 4-time Pro Bowler, 3-time second team All Pro, and more than anything, he made the Pittsburgh Steelers all-time team. When you make the Steelers all-time team and you look at some of the guys that have come through those halls, you got to be a Hall of Famer. I mean, you have to be a Hall of Famer, and he has 1,000 receptions.
Yep. Exactly 1,000, I believe, right?
Exactly 1,000. Yes, he got exactly 1,000, and they were pumping him the football in that game. I think his last game, regular season game, I think was against the Cleveland Browns, if I'm not mistaken. I know Dave knows that. I could be wrong, and likely am wrong. So, yes, he's a Hall of Famer, no doubt.
Okay.
Cowher's a Hall of Fame coach.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I would agree with that probably. He's had a lot of success, and he won a Super Bowl. He went to 2. Would Mike Tomlin be a Hall of Fame coach if he were to retire tomorrow?
I don't know.
Their credentials are pretty much the same.
Then yes.
Okay. All right. No, this is a good conversation.
Tomlin would be a Hall of Fame coach if he would just win 2 challenges in the season.
How many times would he say obviously in his acceptance speech?
Obviously, he would say it a lot.
I would put the over under pretty high on that one. So Okay, so speaking of predictions, and you brought up Tomlin, which is interesting. We did this last week, and so I said I'll bring it back this week, and we'll ask a couple questions with the predictions. We're doing our 30 predictions in 30 days. One that I did was that Mike Tomlin will have three successful challenges in 2019. Now remember, they brought in Terrell Austin. He's supposed to help with that, and pass interference is now a reviewable play. So do you think that's true that Tomlin will have three successful coaches challenges, or is that false?
I think it's true that he will have three, but he won't get the credit for it. The credit will go to Terrell Austin and the fact that he was brought in as a guy to help Tomlin with the challenges, and that's why they got them right.
I agree with you there. I think he'll get some more right this year. I think it's going to help. One I did yesterday. Uh, do you see Benny Snell Jr. and not Jalen Samuels being the number two rusher on the Steelers in 2019 behind James Conner?
No, I don't. And the reason why I think they're going to pass the ball a lot more this year.
Okay.
I'm in disagreement of those people who think they're going to run it more. I think they're going to pass it more. But I think they're going to pass it differently. I think you're going to see a lot of short to intermediate stuff, and I think James Conner is going to catch more balls, and I think you're going to see more of that underneath type stuff. So I think they're going to pass it a little bit more, which will take some of the opportunities away from Snell Jr. And I think Samuel's performance against the Patriots has him solidly as the number two running back on this team. And he played pretty well. I just watched the game the other day, played pretty well against the Saints as well. I,
Yes, he
I
did.
think he's entrenched as the number two. And I think Snell won't get a lot of opportunities to
Okay.
tote that thing.
And the last one, we'll do three of these today. And I wrote this one. I just have to ask your opinion. Will the Pittsburgh Steelers outside linebacker Bud Dupree have a career record of 9 sacks in 2019? His highest, I believe, is 6 in a season.
Who?
Bud the Dud.
Who?
You know what I'm talking
No,
about.
no, it won't
Not
be
even
Bud.
9. I didn't say double digits. I just said 9.
No, I don't think he'll get to nine. I'm going to say 8.5. I think one of those half sacks will get credited to somebody else. It'll be 8.5. It'll be 7.5 or 8. Uh, but you know the one thing, as I've watched Bud, uh, he doesn't finish.
He's getting close. He's getting
You know
close.
what? Like he's one of those like. But I think there is a value in that because sacks are great, right? You want sacks, right? Sacks are great, but pressures and hurries are great as well. And I wish I could, I'll do some research. I know Dave probably has the numbers, and I've said Dave 3 times because Dave is the Oracle, Dave Schofield. And I'm wondering where he ranks in terms of pressures and hurries because you see him get close a lot. You see him force guys to step into the pressure, and Hargrave will get the sack, or Hayward will get the sack. He's generating some pressure. And I go back to the Saints game. I mean, they were cooking. Him and Watt were cooking off the edge in that game. So, he just might be one of those guys that just finds it difficult finishing. But if he could finish a little bit better, maybe he does get that career year. But you said the career, and you said 9 sacks, correct?
Yeah, I think his career high is 6.
If he got 9, how many sacks would Watt have?
Well, I'm basing that prediction off of Watt continuing his upward rise, and he finished with, I think, what, 12 and a half or 12 last year?
You think Watt can get to, I believe, what was James Harrison's record? Was it 16?
I think it
16
was.
and a half? You think he
Uh,
can get to that number? You think Watt could get that high?
I don't think this year. I would put him around 12, 13.
And you keep
In which case, you think it's enough pressure on him where they're going to slide coverage to Watt's side, leave,
right.
leave Bud with more one-on-one opportunities. And the fact that they also have some inside linebackers that should be able to cover better, they wouldn't have to drop him into coverage as much.
I think the key to outside linebacker sack stats is you have to tear up tight ends when they block you with tight ends. I mean, you have to kill tight ends. If they block you with a tight end or a back, you've got to take that as a sign of disrespect. You got to kill the quarterback.
Yep.
I mean, you got to really take advantage of those opportunities.
Absolutely. So, okay, let's do a few questions here. Put it in the live chat on YouTube. Our girl Felicia's already in there doing her thing. And so we have some questions. We'll do some rapid fire questions and we'll call it a show. And so, first with Felicia, she puts $10 in the tip jar. And
Hey, Felicia.
she said, okay, I've got my game ticket and flight paid for. She's going to the Mecca that is Heinz Field this year. She said,
Wow.
is it
Wow,
best?
that's hardcore.
She said, "Is it best to book downtown for a hotel or not? Thanks in advance. You guys are the best." Lance, what are your thoughts on her hotel accommodations?
I would book on the river, along the river by Bettis's restaurant. That's nice. There's a I stayed at a hotel down there. I think it's what is those? One of those fancy kind of upgraded Marriott, I think down there. So I would go down by the river. It's a nice view of the river. You got nice restaurants down there. You can come out your hotel, take a walk, go to Bettis's restaurant. I would go over there. I
Yeah,
would go over there instead of downtown. I'd go over there for sure along the river.
yeah, down by the casino, there's some new places as well. You could walk to the game, don't have to worry about parking, all that stuff. Um, and if you're on the live chat, you noticed that Felicia's question was put in nice bright gold. That's because she used the super chat feature. You can use that if you just type your question at the bottom. There's a little money sign on the right. You can donate any amount of money to the show. It'll highlight your question and we will guarantee to answer it. So if you want to use that, you can. Keystone asks, will the running game have more touchdowns this year than wide receivers?
It better not. It better not. If that's the case, uh, they're in trouble. If that's the case, I mean, you want Ben. I mean, I want Ben Roethlisberger throwing for close to 30 touchdowns. Uh, I think if you want to average what I think you need to average, that 27 points per game, then they're going to have to get a bulk of it in the passing game. Um, I mean, that's just how it is. I mean, you got to score through the air right now. Um,
But a good, successful red zone offense runs the ball in the red zone.
yes, it does. It
So if they
absolutely
do
does.
have running, if that takes away from some of Ben's touchdowns, I'm fine with that. Because if it's when you become pass happy in the red zone where you the field gets so short, that can be a problem. Go
Well, the
ahead.
hotel I stayed at was the Hyatt Place, Pittsburgh North Shore. That's where I stayed.
There you go.
Nice little hotel there.
Based on Behind the Steel Curtains England report, and he's referring to the fact that our Simon Chester was at the NFL Academy where Juju was recently over in England at the new stadium that was built there. And he said, do you believe that Christian Scotland Williamson, who's the Englishman, former rugby player, who has that one spot on the practice squad allotted for him, do you think he has any chance of making the team as a tight end?
Dash?
No, I don't think it's he does have a dash in his name, so I guess he could be.
No. No. It's a
Okay.
good story, but no.
This guy, yeah, I mean, I agree with you based on the fact that he's never played American football up until last year. It's just you have to be a freak athlete to be able to just step on an NFL field and play. Only very few athletes could do that. I'm not sure he's one of those. So Felicia gives us another $5. Says Lance, you're the best. She loves herself some Lance and Dave, that's for sure. Which, by the way, Lance doesn't even know this. Next week, I'm going to be on vacation. I'm not doing podcasts next week, but we
Great.
are doing podcasts. And
Okay.
Lance and Dave, this will be Felicia's dream show. We'll be on
Okay. Now that I know that me and Dave are doing a show.
next week. Yeah, that'll be it for you guys. The standard is the standard. We'll be back. I will not be there. I'll still be contributing to the website behindthesteelcurtain.com. I still have to do my job, but I'm taking the week off of vacation.
Since we're divulging vacation plans,
You
I'll
have
be
one
on
coming up too,
vacation.
don't
Yes,
you?
I will. From the 17th to the 23rd.
Of July?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
I will be
that's
in
a
the
short.
warm,
That's a
be
short
in the
trip.
Be in the Bahamas. I'll be
All right.
in those warm waters.
So I'm
Doing my
gone from the 13th to the 20th. That whole week, all those shows I normally do are going to be subbed in by somebody else. So the standard next week will be Lance and Dave. I think Dave's doing the burning question, and it'll be Dave, Brian, and I believe they might get Tony to jump in on the Steelers preview Thursday. But everything else will be status quo. The Steelers hangover. Lance's, yeah, I said it will still be status quo. And then I will be coming back right before the players hit training camp. And then we actually have some stuff to talk about. Which is
Yes,
good.
yes, we do. Oh, although this show was fun today.
Yeah.
The Hall of Fame stuff is difficult. I'm glad I'm not a voter.
That's what I wrote in my article. I said it makes you realize that that has to be such a tough job to be able to split hairs. You're really splitting hairs with some really good football
It
players.
just, yeah, it does. I mean, a lot of it is feel and perception. I mean, but Faneca is one of those guys that, maybe he came up in some bad years. I'm not sure who got in those years, but Faneca should be in. I
Yeah.
mean, his credentials are rock solid.
And Dave Schofield says that he can find that he didn't do like a really in-depth look yet. 10 safeties are in the Hall of Fame. 10.
That's what I said. That was my prediction.
That was
10.
right. Yep, 10.
I said 10 or fewer, which means there aren't many.
No.
I mean, it is an underappreciated position.
So, but Troy, he's going to be up this season, I think, isn't he?
Yes, that'll be number 11.
If he's not a if he's not a first ballot, I think Steeler fans will probably raid Canton and burn the place to the ground.
Yes, and to Troy's point, not that Troy wasn't an
Well, 'cause
outstanding
Ed Reed
player.
got in last year, right?
Yes,
And he
yes, I
was
believe
first
so.
ballot.
Yes, yes. Not to take away anything from Troy, but to the media aspect of Troy, the hair, the commercials with the shampoo. I mean, all that helps your profile. I mean, because to me, the ultimate Hall of Fame measure is if I don't have to think about it. When you say your name, I should say, "Oh yeah, he's in." Like if I have to pause, then like, wait a minute. Now your candidacy is in question. I want to go, "Oh yeah, yeah, that guy." Yeah. That's the first test. That's the first litmus to me. Is like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, no doubt.
Okay. And Dave also says the Hines Ward's last catch was against the Browns. He did not have a reception in the playoff loss to the Broncos in his final game in the National Football League.
Look at me, bright and early and bushy tailed. Look at that, man. I got the 10. I got the Browns. Look at that.
So yeah, there you go. Anyways, Felicia is donated some more money. She's Lance, you're the best. Dave S, you rock. I miss you. Hope your vacation was great. Another $5. And her birthday is July 19th. So we'll have to wish Felicia a happy birthday on July 19th.
Absolutely. What is OBX though? Ask Dave what is OBX. What is that?
OBX, it's the Outer Banks,
Oh, okay, the Outer Banks. Okay.
North
Learn
Carolina.
okay, learn something
That's
new every
where
day.
I will be headed in on
Oh, okay.
this upcoming weekend.
I have some cousins in the OBX right now, and I was wondering, like, where is Oxen? I was like, where is Oxen? Because
The Outer Banks is a long stretch. The people say, "Oh yeah, I've been to the Outer Banks." So I mean, you could go all the way south, Emerald Isle, and all those places down south past Manio, and you're driving another 45 minutes south, or you could go all the way up to Corolla, where there's only 4-wheel drive beaches and there's no roads. So it's a crazy place, a lot of fun.
okay. Well, you gonna do hunt, fish, try to hide from your family and sleep?
No, I mean, when I go on vacation, here's my life. I wake up early, I go work out, and then the rest of the day's at the beach.
Okay.
Because
All
we
right. Good.
normally my dad and I go golfing, but there's not much golf in the Outer Banks, so we just say not going to golf this trip. We're just going to spend it at the beach with the kids, chase them around, have some fun, and that's
All
it.
right. Eat a lot of food.
You
Good
know,
food.
you know me. That's not going
You're
to.
gonna eat good food.
Yes, that's
Very good food.
so
Which I mean, you got a lot of grilled vegetables,
we will be
all
doing
that
some grilling.
stuff. I mean, yeah. I mean, you grill and eat some, grass fed.
You know it,
Yeah,
man. You
yeah,
know how
exactly,
we do.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Any kombucha out there? Any kombucha
Yeah, we'll
out
take
there?
it with us. We'll take it
Okay,
with
so
us.
okay, alright, alright,
All right.
yes.
So before we turn this into a fitness podcast, we'll cut it short. Lance, why don't you send us off for the show?
Tune in, tell a friend, and subscribe.
Absolutely. Make sure you check out next week, Lance and Dave on the Standard is the Standard. We'll see you.